Exactly right.
Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your day with us. We're going to begin our show this morning at the White House, where the Trump administration's attempt to freeze wide-ranging federal financial assistance is on hold. The sudden and unexpected move created chaos and confusion in Washington and beyond. Well, just minutes until the plan was due to go into effect on Tuesday, a D.C. federal judge issued a ruling blocking the order until Monday, when a hearing will be held for further arguments.
The White House says the pause is needed so agencies can conduct spending reviews, but the plan has been widely condemned by Democrats and some Republicans. They argue it would hurt everyday Americans who depend on federal aid for things like health care and food. It's just the latest way President Trump is trying to reshape the federal government and dramatically cut costs. Now his administration is offering roughly 2 million federal workers a deal to quit and receive a severance package. NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr has more on the buyouts.
This morning, more than 2 million federal workers facing a choice: take a newly offered severance package or accept Trump administration requirements, including returning to work in the office. A senior administration official telling NBC News they expect up to 10% to quit, leading to around $100 billion in savings. Some Democrats pushing back on the president's move.
He doesn't have any authority to do this. Do not be fooled by this guy. You were here before he was here, and you'll be here after he was here.
A judge hitting a week-long pause on a separate order freezing federal grants and loans after nonprofit groups, 22 states and Washington, D.C., all sued the Trump administration, citing constitutional provisions that Congress, not the president, sets federal spending. The White House press secretary saying the freeze is aimed at federal aid that might run counter to President Trump's executive orders and is not a blanket pause on all assistance.
Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause.
Organizations like Meals on Wheels that delivers meals to seniors confused and concerned.
It's not considered a direct federal assistance program like Social Security or Medicare would be. So we're concerned.
It all comes as President Trump is pressing ahead on immigration enforcement and rounding out his cabinet picks. Today, a confirmation hearing begins for his controversial choice to head the Department of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. Going back to those federal worker buyouts, the American Federation of Government Employees is warning what it calls a civil servant purge could mean chaos for Americans depending on a functioning federal government, though the offers exclude members of the military, postal service, immigration enforcement, and national security. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Well, the Trump administration's major crackdown on undocumented immigrants continues. NBC News is learning that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is planning to target 3 cities per week for large-scale arrests, with Aurora, Colorado up next. That is according to 3 sources familiar with the planning. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez was in New York City to witness the latest round of ICE arrests.
New York City, at the center of President Trump's escalating crackdown on illegal immigration. Federal agents arresting an alleged ringleader for the notorious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, who they say is wanted for kidnapping and assault. New Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in body armor overseeing the roundup.
We're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
President Trump touting the ongoing arrests.
We are throwing them the hell out of our country. We have no apologies, and we're moving forward very fast.
2 sources familiar with the planning confirmed to NBC News ICE leadership has told agents to increase their arrest of undocumented immigrants to 1,200 to 1,500 per day nationwide. One source calling it a quota, adding agents may be penalized for not meeting it.
Mexico! Mexico!
Across the country, Trump's deportations are sparking both fierce backlash.
There's a real goal here to stoke fear into the American people.
And strong support.
I'm really happy it's happening. Very happy, actually.
After NBC News reported nearly half of undocumented immigrants arrested Sunday had no prior criminal record, besides being in the country illegally, NBC's Peter Alexander asking the White House.
So as violent offenders no longer the predicate for these people to be deported.
If you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
The cost of all this can be staggering. Two sources familiar with the process tell NBC News deporting one migrant runs around $10,500. Here in New York, city officials estimate it costs an average of $352 a night to house asylum seekers.
Are you scared? Tiene miedo?
La verdad, sí.
Catherine Espancha from Venezuela says she and her daughters have stayed at this hotel, a migrant shelter, for 6 months. That could be a price tag to taxpayers of more than $63,000. And three sources familiar with the planning now tell NBC News that large-scale arrests will now happen in 3 U.S. cities per week. Back to you.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much.
New video shows a military plane crashing at a base in Alaska on Tuesday. As you're about to see here, the moment an F-35 fighter jet began to spin out of control. Then it just simply drops from the sky before crashing at Eielson Air Force Base. The crash happened during the landing phase of a scheduled training exercise. U.S. Air Force pilot was able to safely eject, was taken to a hospital for more evaluation. The Air Force says the pilot reportedly experienced an in-flight malfunction, adding there will be a thorough investigation into the crash to make sure something similar doesn't happen again. Incredible sight, and just the importance of that training to eject, get out of there.
I was just going to say, he obviously knew what he was doing. My goodness, ejecting in time. What a video. Thanks, John. Well, today the Northeast is in for some more lake effect snow. You've been hearing us talk about that a lot. For all the details, let's take a look at your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman is with us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We've got plenty of winter alerts up at this hour in exactly that location that you just mentioned. The Northeast, a couple of those still lingering across parts of the Great Lakes. Those are the two areas that we're going to watch for some impacts today when it comes to the wintry weather. We've already woken up to some snow across this region. You can see it stretched from the coast, basically back towards the lakes. And this is going to be the general area that sees that additional snow throughout the day today. Now, a couple things to note. This is going to be a quick moving system, so it's not going to hang out. It's not going to be a prolonged kind of thing that we deal with even into tomorrow. It's mainly just a today issue, but we will see some impactful conditions when it comes to travel. Those snow squalls producing some really reduced visibilities, possibly, especially as we're on the roads as the day goes on. We'll see that blowing wind or the blowing snow with those elevated winds. And you can see we've got wind alerts up for 57 million people across this region. So, of course, this is why we're watching for those reduced visibilities as the day goes on. Here's what we're talking as far as some of these wind speeds. Notice 50 miles per hour for peak gusts in Harrisburg. We got same story up into portions of New York City, 40 mile per hour winds. This likely going to cause some airport delays as well. So even close to the coast where we're not expecting all of that snow, you'll likely still see some delays when it comes to the airports. Places like Washington, D.C., New York, Atlantic City could see some difficult travel as well. Meanwhile, across the south, we've got a couple of days where we're going to see a system kind of ramp up and bring us the potential for severe weather and some flash flooding. Today, this is the scene that we see. That rain becomes a little more widespread. We watch this area specifically for the chance to see some stronger thunderstorms. It'll be isolated, but I want you to watch for maybe potential strong wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. We've got a bit of a hail threat as well, but the good news is that tornado threat remains low. But this is centered across parts of Texas today, with Dallas included in that. Dallas and parts of southern Oklahoma also included in this slight risk of some flash flooding. We're going to see some impressive rainfall rates across this region, and some of those totals could be upwards of 3, 4, even 5 inches. So no surprise if we see some localized flooding across this region. Tomorrow, an even better chance of the severe weather and the flooding. So notice we've got that rain stretched from basically the Gulf Coast up into the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley, into the Mississippi Valley. That's where we'll see kind of this intense plume of moisture, leaving us with the chance for some flooding once again, and also those severe storms possible too for tomorrow. Here's what we're looking at. The greatest threat, I think, will be the hail, 2 inches and higher in size. But we'll see some damaging winds likely as well, and a couple of tornadoes not out of the question. That flooding threat is much more widespread, especially when you look at the slight risk. It stretches from, again, the Ohio Valley all the way into Texas, Dallas, Little Rock included in that, Paducah, as well as Memphis. So once again, heads up for that. We'll see some river flooding too. We've got just this big batch of moisture that's going to move across this part of the country, guys, and leaving us with a couple of days of some impactful weather for a good part of that region. Now, the good thing is it's not snow. It is the rain that we'll see. We've got kind of this weather whiplash with temperatures. So this is all going to fall in the form of rain. No snow for our folks there.
Rough January for that part of the country.
Seriously. Indeed. Much moisture. Thanks, Angie.
We also have an update this morning on those mysterious drone sightings we've been telling you about for the past couple months. The White House now says, well, they aren't all that mysterious. At a press briefing on Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said many of those drones were authorized to be flown by the FAA for, quote, research and various other reasons. She went on to tell reporters that those nighttime sightings over New Jersey and other states were not the work of an unnamed enemy. Leavitt also said that the issue grew worse because of curiosity, with more drones flown by everyday citizens taking to the skies to see what was going on.
Well, later this afternoon, former New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez will face sentencing after being convicted of a federal corruption scheme. You might remember this, involving gold bars and envelopes full of cash while in office. Prosecutors are seeking 15 years in prison for Menendez, who is now the first U.S. senator to be convicted of acting as a foreign agent. Prosecutors argued that he used his power in the Senate to do favors for several New Jersey businessmen. However, lawyers for Menendez are asking the judge for no more than 27 months in prison, plus at least 2 years of community service. The 71-year-old resigned from Congress in August of last year, a month after a jury found him guilty on all 16 corruption charges he faced, which you see on your screen. That includes bribery, extortion, and conspiracy to act as an agent for Egypt. Menendez plans to appeal the verdict.
Health concerns will take center stage today at Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Senate confirmation hearing. He's Mr. Trump's pick for the top job at the Department of Health and Human Services. And he's facing some strong opposition, even from within his own family. His cousin, Caroline Kennedy, sent a letter to senators describing him as unqualified and a predator. On top of that, many parents and doctors are worried about his public stances on vaccines. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has more on these rising concerns.
Bobby himself is a predator.
Caroline Kennedy is lashing out at her cousin, calling him unqualified to oversee critical agencies, including the FDA and CDC, pointing in part to his stance on vaccines.
Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following, hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
Do you have any response to the letter released by Caroline Kennedy?
RFK Jr. ignored NBC News' questions, but his cousin's concern is echoed in Franklin, Tennessee.
It's very scary that that person is going to be making public health decisions for our family and the country as a whole.
Jen Fisher's 12-year-old son Raleigh was born with a congenital heart condition that makes him more vulnerable to all types of sickness. Her fear now made worse, Jen says, by growing vaccine skepticism within the Franklin community.
What does that mean for Raleigh? It's a scarier thing to send him out the door every morning. It's cold and flu season. So there's a lot of illness going around.
Here in Tennessee, according to the CDC, more and more parents are choosing not to vaccinate their children against preventable diseases such as measles and whooping cough. A reality Dr. Daniel McGinley says he is increasingly confronting in his practice.
Do you worry that people are going to die because of this skepticism?
Some will.
You're confident that that is going to happen?
If these diseases come back, more people will die.
Vaccine skepticism is growing across 40 states plus Washington, D.C. Last school year, the percentage of kindergartners exempted from one or more mandatory vaccines was the highest ever recorded, fueled by online conspiracies and high-profile critics of vaccines and vaccine mandates, like RFK Jr.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Since his nomination, he said he's not anti-vaccine and he won't take them away. But parents like Fisher say they'll be watching his confirmation hearing closely, knowing that for Raleigh and children like him, the stakes are high. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Franklin, Tennessee.
For more on what to expect in RFK Jr.'s hearings today, we are joined now by NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So RFK Jr., we just heard a lot of it there, has drawn this criticism for spreading specifically vaccine misinformation, but then also general medical disinformation. One example is his assertion that Wi-Fi causes cancer. And he's also publicly challenged the science and research of the agencies that he's now poised to lead, which I think is a big piece of this. Then we have the scathing letter from Caroline Kennedy calling on the Senate to reject his nomination. Tell us more about what she had to say in that video, in that letter.
Yes, Savannah, and I think it's really important to emphasize kind of the gravity of someone like Caroline Kennedy coming out and speaking out against her first cousin. We've seen a wide range of Kennedy family members be very critical of RFK Jr.'s stance on a wide range of issues, but there's probably no one more significant in the Kennedy family than Caroline Kennedy. She, of course, the daughter of former President John F. Kennedy. She served as an ambassador both in Japan and Australia, a very prominent member of the family. And she's not been amongst that group of Kennedy family members who've been so publicly and vocally critical of her cousin. So the fact that she came out and was so insistent that he not win confirmation is notable. And the way she did it was also powerful. That letter to senators and then the video that she posted online. Take a listen to a little bit of what she had to say in that video.
He lacks any relevant government, financial, management, or medical experience. His views on vaccines are dangerous and willfully misinformed. These facts alone should be disqualifying. But he has personal qualities related to this job, which for me pose even greater concern. I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator.
But it's important to keep in mind as you take a listen to what Caroline Kennedy had to say, and perhaps there's a lot of Americans that may be impacted by this. The viewing audience for this, the people that need to be impacted by this is a very relatively small group. It would just take 4 Republican senators to vote no on his nomination in order to kill it. And there's no real indication yet that Republican senators are moved by the words of Caroline Kennedy. I think perhaps it will mean a lot more as to how he performs over the next 2 days in these hearings as to whether or not you could see some Republicans break. Overwhelmingly, what we've heard from Republican senators, while they may have concerns about some of the things they've said in the past, that he's said in the past, they like the idea that he's going to come in and disrupt the healthcare space. And ultimately, they believe that he will enact Donald Trump's agenda, not his own personal agenda. Savannah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ryan, I was going to ask for those who support Kennedy, what's the main argument that he's right for the job, and just kind of highlight what other issues could come up during this hearing over the next couple days.
Yeah, so I think more than anything, Donald Trump ran on this agenda of shaking up Washington, wanting to change the status quo. And that's what a lot of Republican senators see in RFK Jr. They want him to come in and ask tough questions about the way things have been done in the healthcare industry over the past 50 years. And they believe that while he may push a little bit too far on some of these big issues, that there will be guardrails put around him by the Trump administration. But keep in mind, it's not just vaccines. Obviously, vaccines are a huge concern, perhaps the biggest concern when it comes to RFK Jr. But he's questioned weight loss drugs, which have become hugely popular across the United States. He wants to overhaul the food inspection process, change the way agriculture is produced in this country, which could have dramatic effects on the way this country produces and feeds its population. And then, of course, there's his abortion stance. He's been a longtime pro-choice politician. The vast majority of these Republicans that are going to vote for him are decidedly pro-life. So it could cut both ways for RFK Jr. During these hearings over the next couple of days.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much. And you can get full coverage of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s confirmation hearing today, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.